Hey, how's it going, ninjas? In this week's class, we're going to talk about how to edit the multicam clip that we brought into Final Cut Pro after we synced it inside of Pluralize. So, we're going to start with how to set up the audio. So let's slide over into Final Cut. So you're going to see the timeline that we imported in. It basically has all of the audio file. It has all of the audio for every single audio file. So for the feed, the backup, the groom, the officiant. That's why it's so important to have everything labeled, because now I know what everything is. So usually one of the first things I'll do is basically find when the first person is walking out. So I'll usually switch over to the wide shot for that. The wide shot I have underneath, the way you switch over is just by clicking right here on this little screen icon right here on the left of that track. So I'm just going to look when the first person starts to walk out. It looks like the groom's already walked out there. So I'll kind of just like find the right spot, fast forward to it. That looks like about the first people that we want to have. So I'll just stop right there. And I'm just going to set a marker to remind us that that is exactly where we want to be. And now I'll just kind of like trim everything in. You can do option left bracket for these type of things. It'll kind of slide me over there. Sometimes the option left bracket doesn't work in multicam, so you just have to do it over manually. It's like a weird thing. Sometimes what I'll do to make it a little easier is I'll just command B on each track, and now I've cut it. And if you delete, now they're all gone. That's kind of a faster way to be able to do it. Just command B on each one. You're gonna have to do each one individually in multicam. It's a little weird, but that's kind of how it is in multicam. Some of the commands are a little bit different than in normal editing, but once you kind of get used to it, basically you just have to have this set up correctly so that you're ready to start editing in the other clip. I'm gonna show you how to create that in a second. So right now, the first thing we want to worry about is our audio. So let's switch back to the frontal camera. Usually I'll go to like a part where they're speaking a lot to find out the audio for this, to find out the main audio for the whole ceremony, and then you would adjust little parts individually. Like when the groom is speaking, you're actually going to have to find that part and turn it up, mix it for the groom speaking. You don't want it to be too low while he's speaking and you're still on the efficient's audio. The same thing with the bride. You want to make sure when she's speaking, you turn up the audio that's best for her, turn down the other audios. So usually what I'll do in the beginning is kind of just turn off all of my camera audio. That's kind of the first thing I do. I might not even use the camera audio. That usually is just like an ultimate backup that I have. I might use it to bring in the actual ambience back in. You'll see how I do that in a second. How to turn that off, you go right here to your inspector here on the top right. You can also do a command 4, and you go to your audio, which you can decide if you go to your video color correction. We'll go to the audio, and you just go down here to audio configuration, and you uncheck it. That basically turns off the audio for all of that. Now, usually I'll just, at this point, I don't want to turn off the backup, but I'll just turn it down. And the main thing we're going to be talking, I didn't turn down the efficient, so like we'll just take care of that right now. Command B and just deleting. Now, the main person that's speaking right now, what we're looking at, let's just look at it. So we have to turn on the audio for each track. That's something I hadn't mentioned. So you want to turn on the audio for each track. This is something that I do because basically I'd rather decide to turn off audio in the actual clip and adjust it clip by clip basis than do it on a track basis. This is something that you might decide to do differently. This is how I do it because basically I like using a lot of the different audio sources at the end of the day to bring out the ambience of the room. I like to have a very clear audio of whoever's speaking, but I like to have a little bit of room introduced. I don't want it to sound like we're inside of a studio or anything. This is a wedding, there's people around, you should hear all of them. So let's go right here to where someone's speaking.
Alexander, please take Rebecca's hand.
So obviously that sounds a little weird. So let's just turn down everything but the officiant. The officiant's audio should be the best audio we have of him.
And repeat these words.
Now you could see that I record everything on mono because I'm using Zoom H1s. So if it's mono, like you see here on your waveform, it's only going on one track. you just go right here and just dual mono it. And now you'll be able to have it go on
Alexander,
both
please
tracks.
take Rebecca's hand.
It's a little too high. I usually like everything centering right around -12. That's always what I've learned in California and Los Angeles. That is kind of like the industry standard to have your averages be around -12. You might peak a little bit closer to -6 sometimes, rarely, but you should keep all of your main stuff around -12.
Go. All that you were.
So right
all
here
that
we're
you are,
we're
and
just
all that you
slightly
ever
a little too high. So I'll just probably bring it down like 3 dB, so just -3 it. And that's going to be bring us like pretty close to
Alexander,
where we
please
need to
take
be.
Rebecca's hand and
So we have good audio now
representing
on
you,
the
Rebecca,
efficient.
here and actively considering the fact that one of them is addicted to shopping.
And you might see that in certain parts of the ceremony, someone might be they might be speaking lower than others.
And know that my love is present
But right here, it seems pretty good.
and spotted.
So what I'll do is basically what I'll show you to show you how to basically bring in the ambience a little bit. So we have the music here in the beginning. I'm going to switch over to the camera that's manned. Right here, we can see a little bit of the music. You see how I sling over to get the groom's reaction right there? Get a few seconds of his reaction, then I'll swing over and get the bride again. Have to do quick adjustments. There's no retakes on this one. And then, so I'll basically bring in the ambience a little bit. It's a little too clean. So I'll bring in my backup a little bit. You see if it comes in too much, it gets too loud. You just want to have it basically just kind of breathing through. And then this would, sometimes the feed doesn't sound good here. Sometimes it'll just sound really bad. So you see, like it just sounds really bad. Sometimes the feed, what happens is that it's really better. A lot of times these DJs don't want you to record the music. They just want you to have a good, basically they're allowing you to have a good audio of any microphone. You can see on the microphone it sounds good. This is something that I think they do basically because I'm not supposed to record the music. I'm not supposed to, that would be illegal for me to record the music that's being played live there. For whatever reason, they don't want me to record the music.
Rebecca, please take Alex.
A lot of times I'll have the better music from them so that I know what music was playing from the backup. This is something depending on the DJ. Sometimes you do get a better feed than others.
Yeah. Will you love Rebecca willingly and completely?
So it sounds pretty good the way I'm introducing it back in.
And forsaking all.
And now
Will you, Alexander, promise to accept her just as she is?
these are the vows right here. So the groom is going to be speaking in between the officiant. So we'll see how
sharing
that'll
with
work.
her and supporting her through the experiences of your lives, be they easy or difficult, happy or sad, challenging, mundane, or expensive.
You see, it's a little too low on him. So I'll just zoom into his track. This is the groom right here. That was at the end of when he's speaking. So I'll use the range tool. You press R. I could basically just select the range that I want.
He is sharing with her and challenging, mundane, or expensive.
And right there is where I want the groom to start. So I'll just slide that over. This is basically the audio that I need. This is the section of audio that I want to turn up for the groom. So I'll just turn that up to about 0. Just to give us a good start. Sometimes it's a little tricky to get it to 0. We'll do -1 for now. And let's play it. And sometimes what you have to do when you do this range, it gives you a very fast fade in. So I'll usually just kind of fade it in myself, a little more subtle of a fade in, so that I have a little bit smoother of audio.
I sure will.
So you see that I was a little late on that. So I'll just slide this over. Let's see how it sounds now.
I sure will.
It's a little high. So I'll just slide that down a few dBs. We're on -1, so I would say about -8 should be good right now.
I sure will.
That sounds pretty good. We'll see that we're on mono. Basically, all the external audio that I'm recording for these lavaliers is on mono, so we'll have to adjust that in
I
post.
sure will.
There is an adapter you can use to adjust that while you're recording, but I don't really use that type of thing.
I sure will.
Are you?
All right, so we got that. That's basically how you would adjust it. So when the bride speaks, You would grab it. Usually the groom's audio is going to be best for the bride. She's very close to him, as you can see. She's only a couple feet. She's almost speaking directly into his lavalier. His lavalier's right here. She's a couple feet away from it. So when she speaks, you'll just basically turn up the groom's mic is usually the best thing, unless they point the microphone towards her. If they point this officiant mic towards her, you might be getting better audio there, and you're recording that as well. I always record everything I can, so I'm recording this microphone. I'm recording a microphone on the groom. I have a microphone placed near a speaker, and then I also have a microphone on the officiant. You can see there's a lavalier microphone right here near the officiant. And then I also have good microphones on each of my cameras. So I have a lot of audio sources. Now, once you have all your audio sources all set up, you have it the way that you want. You have it mixed, sounding good, everything sounds good. You can also do, another little tip that I like to include is that you can also do some EQing to your audio. This will make it sound a little bit more robust depending on the situation. Usually I like to open up the graphic equalizer, which will be right here in audio enhancement when you click on your audio track. And sometimes you have to click on the main audio track that you're actually dealing with, because it is 2 tracks, and when it combines them, it doesn't let you adjust just the first track. So you click the first track, and you would open up the graphic equalizer right here under equalization. You click on this little guy right here that makes it go away. This makes it come back. This is the graphic equalizer, and I usually like to adjust 2. 2 is basically more of a speaking, where their actual voice lets you have their voice make it a little deeper or softer depending on if you recorded it bad. Usually my microphones are pretty good, so I don't have to do much of this, but sometimes maybe if it was a little too far away or a little too close, you might have to adjust this type of thing and just adjust the 2 right here, like this.
Sharing with her and
you see how it sounds different?
through the experiences of your lives, be they easy or difficult, happy or sad.
There it sounds more far away. Usually if you just pump it up a little bit, it'll sound a little better. Just give it a little pump up. And then that's kind of the basics of what I'll do to the audio before we'll just Shift Z to zoom out on everything. That's the basics of what I'm doing to the audio. There's not really much else to set up. While you're actually editing, you'll see parts that are messed up, and you'll basically have to go back in here and fix them. So now, once we have everything set up, we're gonna set up a compound clip from this multicam clip. What we'll do before we start setting that up, we'll copy the clip's name so we don't have to write it again manually, and we have the same clip name for everything. We'll just Command C to copy that. And now we'll right click on here and new compound clip. We'll put the same name we just selected. I just copied it, just Command P to paste it in. And you can see that is not inside of a folder keyword collection. So we'll just drag that into our timeline keyword collection. All right, we'll click on that. Now what you'll see is that it's basically showing one camera the whole time. If you want that to change, you have to change the camera that it's showing in this compound clip. So what I'd like to do before I start doing some of this editing, I'd just like to clean up my workspace a little bit. I'll get rid of my video scopes, Command 7, and I'll just have this right here. You can have your video angles right now. It'll be Shift Command 7, or you can go right here under View, and you add your angles. Now you can see all the angles that we have. You could basically change the angle that you're seeing the whole time by pressing Option, and either these are all assigned to a number. So this would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. What you're going to do, you have to set up basically what you're going to be switching. You don't want to be switching between the audio. Every time you switch or do an edit, you want the audio to stay the same. You want the video angles to change, but the audio will stay consistent. Someone speaking, you're not switching between different audio sources. You're keeping that same audio source. You want the audio source that's best for you. When the officiant's speaking, usually you're going to be using this lavalier mic right here, so you'd stay on that. So the way that you control that are these 3 options right here on the top of the angles. This allows you to enable video audio switching, but what we'll do is just video switching. We want the audio to stay the same. You could also do audio only switching if that's your type of thing. So now I'll usually start on my wide angle. So you press Option and the corresponding video angle, and I want to go to my wide angle, which is 2. So Option 2, and that'll switch everything over to just my second angle. So for the whole thing, everything is just my second angle. Now let's find that first spot that we had before. Basically, you got to find it again. We'll just rewind right to it. We found it before, but this is just part of the process. So it'll start right there. This is where we're starting everything, left edging it. Probably what I'll do is I'm just going to give myself a little bit more of a lead on my video here, just so that I have enough. I don't have to worry about the fades or anything like that now that I'm seeing that I'm going to be using up to that much. And then we'll do that for the end too. We could do that at the end later, but usually I like to trim off like the ultimate end right away. It's going to end before here. This is option right edge. It's a right bracket. It's the keys right next to P. So to the right of P, you have your left bracket and your right bracket on your keyboard. Those are the keys that I'm using right now. So, okay. I actually think right now when I'm looking at it that I might want to be on my first angle, so I'll switch to my first angle. I might have, right now we have to set up our audio before we start anything. So basically right now we have to choose which audio tracks we will have on. So basically the way that I work is I have them all on and I turn them all off in the multicam timeline, not here. Here I don't decide that. I like to do that on a clip-by-clip basis. So once you have all your audio turned on, you can confirm that it sounds the way that you want it to sound.
Están profundamente agradecidos.
Sounds good. So now I can pretty much start editing. The way that this works, usually you're suggested to start just watching the video in real time and editing in real time, deciding which clips you're going to be going to, pressing the corresponding number. So you can just start playing it. I start here on the wide. I'm watching him, and then I can cut to the other one. One thing you're going to see that I haven't switched so that I can show you, it's going to be playing a little bit jittery if you're doing 4K, especially in multicam editing. Depending on your computer, I have a 5K iMac, I have one of the best Macs, it's still a little bit jittery in Final Cut. So what I always do when I'm editing in Final Cut is switch on proxies. So I'll just switch on the proxies. So if you don't have the Proxy Media, basically you can click on the timeline itself. If you don't want to create Proxy Media for all your clips and just the timeline, transcode media, select create Proxy Media. You could also create optimized media if you just want to work with ProRes 422, which is a very good standard file. And you would press OK. I'm already creating them, so I won't press OK. We'll just wait for it to finish. It's usually pretty quick if you're just doing the time. Alright, so now once you have all your proxy media in place, we'll just kind of set ourselves back up for editing. So we'll start playing. Usually I'll cut to camera 2 here, cut back to camera 1, get the groom, then cut back to camera 2, get the groom again. Now you saw that he had like a nice smile there that I missed, so this is like an edit that you can adjust. You can see in the other cameras right here, he had a nice smile here on the top left. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of slide over our edits to make sure I don't miss that smile, and then cut away a little bit later, cut away right after it. And you'll just kind of work your way through the edit, cutting to the parts that you think are best. Obviously, when you see the cameras moving like that, you would not be on that camera. You would cut to another camera when the camera's adjusting. That's why I have this safety angle. Basically, this is a wide shot of safety angle. You could always cut to it when you're adjusting. So then you'll wait for everybody else to start walking out. Usually I'll try to catch like a little bit of the end of that, like wherever, like you want to basically have all the stable stuff in and nothing like unstable. So you saw that smile, so I'll just slide over, make sure I catch that smile. These are all moments that people really care about, like when he smiled there, and these are definitely the things that you want to catch on camera here. So now it's in focus. I'll switch back to camera 1. Usually I'll stay on there until she walks by, and then I'll switch over for a second and then switch back. Well, you can see I'm adjusting there, so I'll make sure to not be on there. Basically, I'm just sliding here on the timeline. Get right there when I'm back in focus, and I'll stay on here until I start adjusting. Right there. So stay on her. Basically, this was the only place I could put this camera that you're seeing here. There wasn't much area here to the left or to the right. Usually I wouldn't want to have it right there in view. I'd want to have it a little bit over so it's not in the frame as long. But you still get it out of the frame. In this specific wedding, I had the photographer basically stand right in front of me. He did not want to move. These are things you have to deal with in a real life wedding. But you still have to get your shots like you saw here. I still have a good shot of every single person. Still have a good shot of every single person, even if the photographer got in front of me. So basically, that's how you'll go through the whole wedding like that. You'll cut between each angle. You'll find the right moment. You never want to be, when you're adjusting things like that, that's not the camera you want to be on. You want to be on the other camera. And just cut to the good moments. And you're checking your audio the whole time too. You're making sure your audio sounds good. And if it doesn't, then you'll go back and adjust it in your multicam clip. So work your way through the whole ceremony. Make sure that you have good audio throughout. Make sure you're on the right camera throughout. If you have to be on your safety camera, make sure you are switching to your safety camera. You never want to show things that are like this that you're seeing here where you're pointing at the wrong place. No, I should be switching to the safety camera here. I should be on the safety camera there. You want to make sure that there's no mistakes. When they're watching it later, you don't want them to wonder, why did he make this mistake here? You're a professional editor. You don't want to have any dumb mistakes like there. If you see here, I'm moving my secondary camera. I have to make sure I cut away before I do that. I cut back to my first camera, let it move. They're only seeing this first camera. They don't even need to know I moved it. And once it's ready and I need it, and it's in focus, you see I'm still adjusting it there. Once it's ready, I can cut to it. Oh, it was too early. You see it wasn't ready. Still moved it a little bit. So there, we can, still wasn't ready. You can basically cut to it when it's ready. And you could adjust that here. You could always adjust all the edit points here, frame by frame, by doing nudging left or nudging right. Those are the keys right next to M. So the two keys to the right of M, they look like basically arrows looking right or looking left. That's basically how you nudge frame by frame. If you want to nudge 10 frames either way, you press shift while you're doing that. It'll do 10 frames. It's a nice little trick if you want to nudge more than just one little. This is just one frame. These are 10 frames. So once you get that going, the last thing that you basically need to know is once you're done with the edit, you're going to have to put transitions in the beginning. The way that I do that is basically taking the first edit off the track. So I'll put Option Command up to take me off the track, and then I could move this a little bit over and adjust it. And usually I'll put a transition, so Command T, now it'll fade in right there. And I usually like to separate the audio as well. So we'll detach the audio, and I'll kind of like have it fade in whenever I need it to fade in, whenever I want it to fade in. Well, another thing I like to do is detach the audio, and then we can have it fade in whenever we want it to fade in. We could also adjust how long the audio. Usually I like to have the audio a little bit longer in our when we're making our clips, all of our audio tracks. Usually I like to let them hang over a little bit. You could do this manually. This is a thing you could decide. This is really more of a working choice or creative choice. But just so that you have the audio fade in the way that you want it. And you'll do that at the end too. Once you have the end edited, we'll just shift out so we can see that. Let's say this is where we want to end it. We'll just option bracket to end it right there. And usually I'll Command B to just cut that off. I'll take that off like you said, like we just saw. We'll put the audio down as well. Usually I like to detach the audio for the whole thing. That's really your choice. Sometimes you need to detach the whole audio from the whole thing if for certain problems that you have to fix. Sometimes you can get away with just detaching it right at the end. So that's Shift Control S, and that'll detach the audio. And you can just let the audio fade out right here. The way that I'm fading that out is just grabbing the end of the clip, this little, I guess you'd call that just a little white mark or little marker right there, and you just drag that over. That'll create a fade out. You can adjust your fade out, have it linear, +3, -3, whatever you really like. Sometimes linear works out better on a fade out. Really depends on your audio. Let's check that out. And you'll put in your transition as well, so that'll fade out. And that was probably too long, so we'll fade out a little bit before that. Right there, and we have a fade out. So that's pretty much what you do. You'll go through, you'll edit the whole ceremony, and then you'll make sure to put fade outs and fade ins. And then when you're going to edit this in, basically you have a nice little clip that you can edit right into any other timeline. So I'll show you how we're going to do that in the next couple episodes. The next episode's going to be how to make a rough cut or an assembly cut with all of our organized clips, how to select all the good parts, basically isolate them, label them, color them, make sure that everything is organized in the right way, so that when we start doing our more of a fine cut edit in the later episodes, in the later classes, you have a more of an idea how to do that, and everything is organized so that you're not doing everything in one process. Usually the way that I like to work is have everything very rough in the beginning, and then slowly kind of refine everything until you have a final version. That's even during this multicam clip. You'll want to watch that again, make sure your edits are in the right place, make sure it is playing smoothly, and everything looks good. You want it to look very professional. Alright, so I'll see everybody next week. Thank you. Bye.